Ibutang sa first slide pre. Start na ko. Good day everyone, we are the group 1 and we are discussing about the article of the Philippines a century hence wrote by Rizal. So before we start, please allow me to introduce my group members. Miss Acha, Blanche Marie, Mr. Amparo, Mr. Encas, Arances, and Batan. So for our first reporter, Miss Acha Blanche Marie.
Hello, I am Blanche Marie Acha, the first reporter of the group. So, the Philippines a century hence. Philippines a century hence is an essay written by our Philippine national hero, Jose Rizal, to forecast the future of the country within 100 years. Rizal felt it was time to remind Spain that the circumstances that ushered in the French Revolution could have a telling effect for her in the Philippines. Let us talk about the content of Article 1. Following our usual custom of facing squarely the most difficult and delicate questions related to the Philippines, without weighing the consequences that our franchise may bring upon us, we shall in the present article treat of their future. Article 1 starts the analysis of the past. It is a careful analysis of the past as well as the present with the purpose of evaluating what will happen in the future. The miseries suffered by the Filipinos to the Spanish colonization are also discussed in this article, which can be divided into 3 categories. The first one is Spain's implementation of her military policy. Because of such laws, the Philippine population decreased dramatically, poverty became more rampant than ever, and farmlands were left to wither. The family as a unit of society was neglected, and overall, every aspect of the life of the Filipino was retarded. They had only recently been attached to the Spanish government, when they were forced to support the Spanish people's conquests, wars, and aspirations with their blood and the sacrifices of their sons. And in this struggle, in the terrible crisis, when a people changes its system of government, rules, usages, customs, faith, the Filipinos were devastated, weak, and retarded. The second misery is the deterioration and disappearance of Filipino indigenous culture. When Spain came with a sword and a cross, it began the gradual destruction of the native Philippine culture. Because of this, the Filipinos started losing confidence in their past and their heritage, become doubtful of their present lifestyle, and eventually lost in hope in the future and the preservation of the race. The Filipinos entered a new age. They gradually lost their ancient values, their memories, like forgetting their books, songs, poetry, and laws, in order to memorize other doctrines which they didn't understand. The third and the last is the passivity and submissiveness to the Spanish colonizers. One of the most powerful forces that influenced a culture of silence among the natives were the Spanish friars. Because of the use of force, the Filipinos learned to submit themselves to the will of the foreigner. Former rulers who had only sought to secure the fear and obedience of their people who had become used to servitude, fell like leaves from a dead tree by the people who had no respect for them and had no concept of liberty. Quickly changed masters, perhaps hoping to benefit something from the innovation. That's all.
So thank you, Ms. Acha. For our second reporter, which is Engine Cadet Amparo.
So once again, I'm Engine Cadet Amparo Magdinsel. So, the Philippines as century hence. The question then arises as to what had awakened the hearts and opened the minds of the Filipino people with regards to their plight. Eventually, the natives realizes that such oppression in their society by foreign colonizers must no longer be tolerated. So the Filipinos during Rizal time was unfortunate victims of the evils of unjust, bias, and deteriorating power. So they realized that they were going to stop it because it is very abusive. So one of the solutions was the propaganda movement reform, a national consciousness movement that arose among young Filipino expatriates. Among their specific goals were representation of the Philippines in the Cortes or Spanish Parliament, secularization of clergy, legalization of Spanish and Filipino equality, creation of a public school system independent of the friars, abolition of the polo or labor service, and bandala, forced sale of local products of the government. The propaganda movement was the vehicle used by the Filipinos in their quest for independence from Spain. Their sense of nationalism coupled with freedom in Europe saw the beginning of the propaganda movement to instigate change in their home country. They mostly use literature to agitate for change. Even if it is unsuccessful, it has an impact and contribution to the Philippines. That's all.
Ano to ba? Ako ang slide. So I am the third reporter. I am Engine Cadet Ancahas, and for the continuation for the questions of century hence is first, will the Philippine island continue to be Spanish colony? If so, what kind of colony? So Philippines will remain under the Spanish colonization. So in what kind of colony? We are colonized by them through not having a good trace with them. So for the next question, will they become a province of Spain with or without autonomy? And to reach this stage, what kind of sacrifice will we have to make? So we are not the province of Spain. Instead, we're just only colonized by them. Will they be separated from mother country to live independently, to fall into the hand of other nation, or to ally themselves with neighboring power? So, the Spain was colonized as at the year of 1521 by exploring the Magellan, and it lasted at the year of 1892 when they defeated Americans by the war. So the Philippines declared themselves as independent country. So that's all for the questions. And the next reporter will be Engine Cadet Arances.
Good day, everyone. I'm Cadet Arances. So this is a continuation of the Philippines a century hence. So I'm the fourth reporter. One question Rizal raises in this essay is whether or not Spain can indeed prevent the progress of the Philippines. One is keeping the people uneducated and ignorant had failed. National consciousness had still awakened and great Filipino mind still emerged from the rubble. So Rizal raises a question in this essay. He asks whether or not Spain can indeed prevent the progress of the Philippines. The first argument he posed is that Spain failed to keep the Filipino people uneducated and ignorant. He supported this point by saying that what is happening in the national consciousness among Filipino people had still awakened and great Filipino mind still emerged from the rubble. So the second is keeping his people improved. The race also came to no avail. On the contrary, leaving a life of eternal destitution had allowed the Filipinos to act on the desire for a change in their way of life. They began to explore other horizons through which they would move towards progress. So, the second argument here is that it, it was to no avail for the Spanish to keep the Filipino people becoming impoverished. On the contrary, living a life of external destitution had allowed Filipinos to act with the desire for a change in their way of life. So the third is exterminating the people as an alternative to hindering progress did not work either. The Filipino race was able to survive amid wars and famine and became even more numerous after catastrophe. To wipe out the nation altogether would require the sacrifice of thousands of Spanish soldiers and this. And this is something Spain would not allow. So the third argument that Rizal raised in the essay is that it did not work either for the Spanish to exterminate the Filipino people as an alternative to hindering progress. So that's all the.
So thank you, Mr. Engine Cadet Arances. For our last reporter would be Mr. Engine Cadet Dr. Batan.
Good evening, everyone. I am Indian Cadet Batan, and I am the last reporter. The Philippines as century hand, therefore, had no means to stop the progress of the country. What he needs to do is to change their colonial policies so that they are in keeping with the needs of the Philippine society and to the rising nationalism of the. So, the state needs to now the Spain to do is to change her colonial policies. So the policies of the Spain must be changed because of it. The idea, the mind of the Spaniards may maybe not like, but well, for me, these are the factors that overview the predictions of results in this work. So, the Philippines as century in. To repeat itself, story may have repeated itself 100 times now, but today's battle was not the same battle our forefathers were fighting before. It is now a message with an intention of giving a warning. The colonization by the Spaniards which started our centuries ago is now parallel to the colonization of foreign minds of
Excuse me,
our country.
Batan. Iyon, imong kam. Kana. Okay na, okay na.
And that's all. Thank you. Okay na.
So thank you, Engine Cadet Batan. So that's all for our discussion of the Article 1 for the Philippines a century hence. Hope you like our video.